So good afternoon. We're going to kick off this session about design, personalization, new materials, with a little presentation from Thomas, and then we'll be hearing from Oliver.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jennifer. Yeah, so we will play a bit of ping pong here. I think nowadays, if you think about materials or product development and even about product design, what comes more and more into mind is individualization. So people want to have products that fit to their belongings and maybe even more. So, well, if you think about apparel, footwear, fashion, cars, I think that's one first step, but you even can go one step further and you can think about personalized medicine. What if like a part of your body fails and you need an individualized part to replace it? And this is what I would like to talk about. And one of the technologies that is quite common nowadays is 3D printing. And well, you can 3D print or manufacture all types of materials, metals, ceramics, but most often plastics are used. And there's a question, I mean, how many of you do have a 3D printer at home? Let's see, so it's more and more people, and then typically you print plastics, right? There's one drawback if you work with plastics, that right now, so these are numbers from the McKinsey World Forum in 2014, we had roughly 20% of the weight of fish in our ocean matched up by plastics. And if we continue using plastics, the amount we use it right now in the year 2050, we will have equal amount of plastic to fish in our ocean. And the question is, what happens to the plastic? So I think that's a big question. And well, if you think about plastic as the material to 3D print stuff, maybe we should actually have a closer look at new materials. And this is what I would like to present to you today. It's, well, what we call the Spider-Man technology. Can we actually create new material concepts for future products? And to begin with the story, well, you're all aware of the Spider-Man story. You know, Peter Parker gets bitten by a spider, and then some of the features of the spider are transferred to Peter Parker. Our question is, can we transfer properties of a spider to some other organism? In our case, we think about the silk, so the web of a spider. Can we produce spider silk with an animal or with an organism that is not a spider? So, Spider-Man movie, please, action. So here you see the blueprint, a spider, and the question is, can we use the information that a spider has to make a web which has extraordinary properties? It's a polymer, but it's fully degradable. Can we use that information in order to make now a man-made spider silk with all the properties that we find in nature? And what you see here is one of our technologies that we developed, so we can actually use bacteria to produce the raw material, so to say the monomers. And then we also developed a technology to make fibers out of it. And these fibers, they got the name biosteel. It has nothing to do with steel, it has a lot to do with bio, because this is a fully biodegradable polymer material. Here you see how it degrades in comparison to polyester. So it's just made of amino acids. So you can completely compost it, but it has mechanical properties as you find in nature. Spider silk fibers are super strong. They have a very great toughness, and you can make, well, also textiles out of it. And the most important point now is what to do with these fibers. I mean, they have special properties, but can you also actually go 3D? And in a first trial 2 years ago, we tried to bridge these opposite sides. Can we actually use the new technologies like 3D printing or 3D knitting to get like one piece that you can use in an application? And these applications would actually allow us to be plastic-free, lightweight. We have a good moisture control. The cool thing about spider silk is that no bacteria can grow on it, so it's not getting stinky and smelly. Just think about, having shoes that will never smell. And that was the idea. So we 3D knitted an upper shoe. The sole then just is glued to it, and this is 100% spider silk. And this actually gave then some designers ideas to have now, old technologies or medium-age technologies, but new materials. And this is how I met Oliver. He's a designer, and he can tell you more about what you do with 3D knitting and, giving materials new shapes. Oliver.
Thank you, Thomas. First of all, maybe let's go back. Let's talk about the shoe first. As designers, we want to participate in creating a brighter future. And what we do, therefore, we are, always searching for creative solutions all over the world. That's what I did in my old position as well at DesignWorks. So besides arts, music, architecture, you name it, fashion, there's one must in terms of inspiration for us, and that's innovative technologies like 3D knitting. And that's what you see, what you can see in some of our mood boards. So these mood boards, by the way, that's something that's what we are starting with when we are doing a new project. And it's inspiration for us, it's inspiration for everyone that is working on that project, and sometimes there are thousands involved in that, right? And it helps us, especially in longer processes, to stay focused on that what we initially wanted to have. So back to 3D knitting and to that shoe, it's already there. So the shoe industry knows that already. For us as automotive designers, it's something really, really interesting. There are things we do have in common. What I would like to show you, and just 2 pictures, that's something we have presented last year in Frankfurt, 2 concept vehicles, that shows, let's say, the status quo of the world we are, right? We do have, and these are the bookends, by the way, so we do have the sporty one, focused, lightweight, exaggerated in that sense, and then there's a new world all around electrification, more subtle, changing mindsets, and it's growing and growing, so pretty interesting. Those 2 bookends do have things in common, like Thomas mentioned it, lightweight is important. We want to be fast, not just in driving, but as well in manufacturing and being able to react on that what's happening in the market. And that's really important for Mini especially, is we want to have something that is individualized to that what we would like to have, right? Our customers are special in that sense. They want to have their own Mini. So it's getting more and more important in the future. This slide shows you a little bit, it's not a collage, but it's that what we created for the Mini John Cooper Works Customized. And there on the bottom left, you see the 3D knitted seat trim there. Why? I think in terms of climate in the seat, it's an interesting and really good material in that sense. You can fit it directly towards the driver. So if there is driving Oliver or Thomas, it's different, and that's fantastic. And then something that our customers like a lot is if they see their serial number, especially in that concept, it's something special for them. So that's something we would like to enhance in the future as well. I do have some samples there from knitted seats. So this is actually from the concept vehicle. I cannot hand them out because my color and trim colleague, she will kill me on Monday if there's one part missing. But what's interesting, as you can see here, the difference from a normal knitting, which is just, let's say, a canvas on a roll, that's 3D knitted. And that's something where you are gonna save a lot of steps in between, right? So you just knit it and then it's done. It has the shape already, and that's the big advantage there. Besides 3D knitting, we are talking about, in terms of individualization in the future, we are talking about 3D printing. And the bottom left picture, for instance, the door panel, is printed. So for that concept vehicle, we did that. And it's something that I think almost every one of you knows this technology already. I had the first contact with 3D printing in 1999 at BMW when I made my diploma. At that time, it was just fancy, that technology. And the guys there, they needed kind of a model that is not, let's say, critical in terms of being communicated outwards. So they asked me if they can print my diploma, and I was just excited. I still have that model. It was incredibly expensive at the time. Now, what we see still, this technology is developing further and further, and in many ways. And for us designers, we still feel that it's kind of, we don't have any limits in that sense. And but what we have learned from our, let's say, from the universities is we are thinking in toolings. So we are not able still to think that technology. And, we need to force us every day in order to understand that technology entirely. And it's not just one additional dimension. It feels like that we have, I think, 2 or 3 dimensions on top of that. And the tools are changing. When I started, Alias Wavefront was kind of a technology, or let's say a computer-aided styling program that we used for that. This program cannot handle 3D printed thinking anymore. So it's Grasshopper, things like that. So it's changing entirely, and I believe that in the next couple of years, younger designers that are coming from school, I think they might be even more creative than we started with. Pretty sure about that. So in the next years, I think you're going to see more and more of these technologies in the future, and not just in the car industry. At Mini, that's something I'm really happy about. We are able to give our customer in the future a little bit more in terms of individualization, to enhance this emotional feeling between him, her, and the car. And I think as of March this year, there are defined elements at the car where the customer can design his or her own elements for his own Mini. That's really interesting. If someone is interested, we do have one car that is not launched yet. I think it's at the entrance, at the opposite side, right? Where you can see it, so you can have a look at it. There's someone that gives you some help there. In order to give you a first impression about that, what we are doing there, there's one movie I would like to show you, and it's more than just 3D printing. So then let's start the movie. Protection if you're opening the door, and then you can individualize this projection as well. It's a laser that is, let's say, burning into what is Einstiegsleiste. It's when you're opening the door, the sill, right? There you can have the name, whether the name of yourself, your friend, your girlfriend, or the car. We know that many of our customers, they do have names for the car, so I think it's the next step there, what we're going to show here. And as I said, this for us is just the beginning, right? In the new design processes or new projects we are working with, we try to do the next steps there. And it's not just, as Thomas said, 3D printed plastics, especially I think from a mini perspective, the next step is, enhancing the responsible thinking behind. So I'm totally fascinated about that, what you can do there. In terms of personalization, it's more or less the handover to you again, Thomas. What I'm curious about this personal, emotional connection combined with function. From your perspective, how could it look like?
Yeah, so thanks, Oliver. I think this is a very important point. Can we get, besides this fancy design, also function in something that is 3D printed? And I think best explained is that when you go inside your body, what happens if one part of your body fails? Can you replace it just by printing? And the funny thing is, we played a lot around with spider silk. I showed you the fibers. But what happens when you don't make fibers out of it? If you just take the silk and make a gel out of it, you know gels from cosmetics, and there's cosmetics application for spider silks. The funny thing is, if you have this gel and you squeeze it, you can 3D print because it behaves pretty much as toothpaste. And I show you that. If we can continue with the presentation, please. Yeah, so here it goes. So this is a silk hydrogel, and it's just silk and water in a 3D printer. And what we do there, this is real-time printing. So the gel is quite solid. If you squeeze it, then it flows. As soon as you remove the pressure, it stands still. And what we printed here was an ear. That was our very first thing that we printed, an ear out of spider silk. Even cooler, what we found out is that we can actually take cells from our body, put it inside the gel, and print then the cells with the gel. The advantage is that the cells will not die. They will actually survive the printing because the silk actually shields all the pressure, and therefore it's not killing the cells. And the idea is pretty simple. What we try to do, we try to repair a broken heart by 3D printing. So what we did, and you see actually in the movie, these are 3D printed heart muscle cells in spider silk, and they reconnect and they start to synchronize and beat. And when we saw that this is working, we got the idea, well, this could help us, for instance, after a heart attack. Because if we have a heart attack and survive, what will happen is we have some scars, because our heart muscle tissue cannot regenerate. So you have to have help, and the help could be 3D printing. So what we can do is we scan the damaged area, which is shown here in yellow, and then replace that with a before shown 3D printed hydrogel, which has silk and the cells. And we hope to regenerate living heart tissue with that. So what we hoped to show you is that if we have these new materials concepts and combine that with product development and product design, this opens a completely new field of whatever you want to think about. And that's our slogan. I mean, it's good for you, but it's also good for the planet if you think about sustainability. And with that, we would like to close the presentation and now hand over to Jennifer.
Thank you. So thank you both for fascinating presentations. So let's dig deeper into this whole notion of personalization and the connection with emotion. So when it comes to car ownership, we're moving away from individual ownership of cars to car sharing. So there will be a need for brands who want to continue to exist and to connect emotionally with the customer to be able to offer this kind of personalization. So where do you, how do you see that?
So actually, besides car sharing, what we started with Drive Now already, we are always, we're reaching out to every region, China, Singapore, LA, in order to ask exactly questions like that. what is the next step in terms of sharing products, right? So I think the experience the customer has is the key. And I give you an example. I experienced actually 2 years ago when I was using Drive Now with my wife. And at that time, I had a Mini as well. And we went to Oktoberfest. So it's better not to drive after that. So what we did, we took our car, drove to a Drive Now Mini, and just switched the car. And by incident, there was playing the same music, and the same ambient light was in there, but it was by incident. And I was surprised. I was like, wow, we are fast, right? So, but this is something, what happened at that moment, it felt really like that's your own. And it's just a little example what it means talking about experience. And you know, what is happening in terms of digitalization, we have heard a lot about seamless interaction and so forth. That's something that is crucial. That's what we have to do in terms of sharing a car. And then what I've heard last week recently, in China, there's, and we were talking to, let's say, millennials, right, born after 2000. The group that still wants to own their car is incredibly high still. And we were surprised about that because we thought, okay, that's kind of the past, you know.
Right.
Your parents bought a car. I tried to when I was 18, right? But it's still there somehow. So what we have to do as a car industry, I think we have to deliver both on the same, let's say, platform. The interesting part for me, actually, but Thomas is the specialist for that, you know, in terms of health, you don't want to share everything that your predecessor had in the car, right? So the materials are the key point then in terms of what needs to be done that this experience, let's say in a haptical way, is still something that a customer wants to expect in the future.
So how could you use 3D printing of, say, spider silk materials to help people who are, I mean, to personalize a car for people on the go?
So I think if we talk about technology, there it's really pretty much about just the feeling that, you know, it's mine. It's less about the function to begin with. Yeah. But what we are really interested in at the materials development and materials design part is we would like to get new functions. If you think about the seat that actually remembers the driver and like the sweating behavior of a driver. So you know if one sweats more, one less. In summer it's a bigger deal than in winter. If you have then also smart adaptable materials so that you get function inside your new kind of product. That's our plan. But this is the next step. So you have to start first with the simple steps, and then you try to introduce function. And then the highest level is function inside your body, because this is really personalized. Every heart is beating differently, right? It's not just you switch gears. You really have to have that individualized for the person.
So let's talk about timelines. How far are we from, you know, being able to print new heart tissue?
So I think if we talk about medicine, this is of course the longest path, because besides that it's just, you know, working, then you have to deal with all the safety issues. You have first to go to preclinical trials, you go into animals, and then you go to human trials. So this takes years. So we talk more about 10 years until you really can see such a product then inside a human body. But there's faster ways, and the nice thing is that if we work on all of them right now, it's a give and go. So we learn. So from the complex 3D printing of tissue, we also can learn and benefit for easier things, because, you know, if you know how to do the tricky ones, you also, well, we are available to do the simple ones. And that's sort of like the give and go. So it's much easier to develop something for the car, and their timelines, of course, can be given by Oliver.
And I guess as a designer, it's exciting for you that the whole concept of a car is being rethought.
Yeah.
First with electric cars, and then eventually with autonomous cars, where you won't have a steering wheel, you'll be able to do lots of different things in the car. So where do you see 3D printing fitting into that?
Well, at the moment we know that it's a matter of size, right? The printers are, let's say, limited in that sense. I think the next step is talking about maybe 4D printing, which maybe Thomas meant as well, is like implementing intelligence into that what you're printing. That's the next step, somehow. Where is the level of, so in terms of timeline, it's not clear yet where we do have this kind of break even. So when is a car fully 3D printed? We don't know it, actually. It's really hard to predict. But as I said in my presentation, this technology is developing further and further. And there might be another technological jump where we say, okay, now somehow it's done, right? Right now, we still have to add things together. That's still the point, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're out of time. Thank you both for giving us this fascinating view into the future of design. Let's have a nice round of applause for us.